The long-awaited post-free agency mock draft is here, and the long-awaited post-Justin Fields trade mock draft is here. There were a lot of Bears fans that defended their guy to the nail, and I respect the hell out of that, truly. But now that Justin Fields is not a Bear, I think we can just lock it in. I think this is a pick that has been locked in since the regular season ended, but now for those other couple percent of Bears fans that would let me know in the comments that Justin Fields was their guy, we can officially turn the page, move on. Caleb Williams is the number one pick, and he is a Chicago Bear. Now, the Commanders are they're just in a weird situation because Drake May, to me, is my quarterback too. He's a lot of people's quarterbacks too, but not everybody. And the Commanders in free agency have added guys like Nick Allegretti from the Chiefs, Tyler Biadasz from the Cowboys, and Marcus Mariota in free agency. I think by bringing in Mariota, they are completely fine with Mariota running the offense for the first few games. That way, if they are taking a chance on a guy who they perceive to have a higher ceiling, that he can sit back and learn, and there is no pressure right out of the gate that just because we took him number 2 overall, that he has to play right out of the gate, and that we expect him to be a franchise savior from day one. And like I said, not every team has Drake May as their quarterback too, and I don't think the Commanders do either, and I think Jaden Daniels will be the selection. Now, with the Patriots at pick 3, guys, I'm just going to be honest, this is not a good football team. If you look at their roster, there's holes everywhere, and whether they brought in Caleb Williams, whether they brought in Patrick Mahomes right now, this team is all around not good. So I really think there is a high chance that the Patriots trade this pick, and what I want to emphasize is a couple days ago, hopefully this trade does not happen between the time I record this mock on Sunday evening and release this mock Tuesday afternoon, that another trade happens. But the Minnesota Vikings did not acquire the number 23 overall pick from the Houston Texans to make that pick. So we are going to be looking at trading back with the Minnesota Vikings at pick 11. And I think there will be a chance that we have a couple of other late round swaps because obviously, as you can see, the Vikings do not have, well, they wouldn't get a second next year, but they don't have a 6, they don't have a 7. I think you could argue that the Vikings would trade 177, maybe get back a 5 next year, maybe go for a 4, but for the purpose of this video, we're going to go ahead and offer the trade, which the Patriots will accept. They will acquire 3 number 1 picks from the Vikings, and they will select North Carolina quarterback Drake May. Now, there is a lot to like about this pick. Drake May walks into a situation where he has a great play caller in Kevin O'Connell. He has, some would say, a pretty good receiver in Justin Jefferson. I would say he's a pretty good receiver, pretty great receiver, actually. He also has Jordan Addison. He will have TJ Hawkinson eventually, as TJ is rehabbing a torn ACL. And he has 2 good tackles in Christian Darrisaw and Brian O'Neill right out of the gate. I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that the situation Drake May would walk into is, without a doubt, one of the best in the league. And the Vikings, through the first 2 years of the Kevin O'Connell and Kwesi Adofo-Mensah era, they rode with Kirk, but now it's time to move on, and it's time to go get their guy. And Sam Darnold, just so we are clear, is not going to be the long-term answer, and Sam was never signed to be the long-term answer. He will be a bridge guy. There's even a possibility that Sam may start the first couple games just until Drake gets his feet under him, but the Vikings made that trade to make another trade, and that's why a lot of Vikings fans were extremely revved up when that initial trade happened. So with the Arizona Cardinals on the clock, this pick does not change. Get Kyler Murray a true number 1 receiver for the first time since DeAndre Hopkins. And they're going to bring in Marvin Harrison Jr. There's not a lot of explanation needed here. Wide receiver is certainly a need for them. Marquise Brown just went to the Chiefs, and the Cardinals simply need help at the position, so we're going to give them a phenomenal prospect at the position and go MHJ. Now, with the Chargers up, this pick to me was a prime trade back spot because they had Keenan, they had Mike Williams. They didn't really need a whole lot. I mean, they in theory do need a lot, but with pertaining to the board and what would align for them, it made a lot of sense for them to trade back. However, after trading Keenan Allen to the Bears for just a 4th round pick and flat out releasing Mike Williams, Justin Herbert now needs a wide receiver 1. Quentin Johnson can, of course, bounce back, but to expect QJ to become a Number one, 1,200, 1,300 yard player after the rookie year that we just saw. That's a little tall of an order right now. Malik Neighbors would be a wide receiver one in a lot of other draft classes. We are not going to overthink this, and we are going to make Malik Neighbors a Charger. Now, with the New York Giants on the clock, I don't think they would force J.J. McCarthy in this situation. Personally, I don't. They need a lot of, like we said with the Patriots, this team needs a lot of talent on the roster. Whether Daniel Jones or Drew Lock are the long-term answer, I personally do not believe they are. We can enter 2025 with a true number one receiver and what would be the best receiver this franchise has had since Odell Beckham, and we are going to have 3 straight receivers come off the board with the selection of Washington receiver Rome Odunze. Titans are on the clock. I like what they did in free agency by bringing in Calvin Ridley and by bringing in Lloyd Cushenberry. Calvin Ridley, of course, has to have some context. Obviously, that contract was very, very large. My whole thing with that signing was they're never not going to be able to pay a player on a rookie contract right now because of bringing in Calvin Ridley. So when you help out your rookie quarterback and you don't have to rely on one of the top 3 receivers who, as we see in today's mock, are not there for them, you can just kind of address offensive line and move on, which they already did in free agency by bringing in Lloyd Cushenberry. But guys, they cut Andre Dillard for a reason. He was a disaster in his lone year with them. This is a pick that I've absolutely loved for them since the season ended. It is a pick I will continue to make if he falls. And Joe Alt, Peter Skoronski, and Lloyd Cushenberry is one hell of a left side of an offensive line for anybody, and that's a pick Titans fans should love. Now, with the Falcons on the clock here, guys, they did some spending in the past week. They brought in Kirk Cousins, 4-year, $180 million contract. Quarterback discussions for them, over. They have their guy. I mean, maybe a guy in the 6th or 7th round, but they have their guy. Desmond Ridder is also a Cardinal now due to the Rondale Moore trade. We need pass rush. It seems every year we enter the year and the Atlanta Falcons need pass rush. It's just that problem never seems to go away. Dallas Turner will be the first defensive player off the board in today's mock, and I think it makes a lot of sense for them. Now, with the Bears on the clock, I would have loved having Rome Odunze here, and I would have loved having a trio of Keenan, DJ Moore, and Rome Odunze in Caleb's rookie year, along with DeAndre Swift at running back. Unfortunately, that does not happen in today's mock. Who's to say it might not happen in real life? Well, we'll find out in about a month. But the pick for today is pretty simple. We're going to give Montez Sweat a pairing on the other side. Jared Verse he's to me a guy that has a very, very high floor, and I would be surprised at the peak of Verse's career if he's just not a steady, just consistent 9-sack player a year. And it wouldn't even, I mean, that's not to say that's what he's going to be, but I think that's at minimum what he will be. I think he could easily be a 12 or 13 sack guy a year. And what also is an underrated part of Verse's game that does not get discussed a whole lot, at least as much as it should, is his ability to stop the run. Verse has extremely heavy hands, and his game will translate pretty seamlessly to the NFL. Next up is the New York Jets. We know that they recently traded for Morgan Moses from the Ravens, and they also signed Tyron Smith from the Cowboys. That, to me at least, does not take away their offensive tackle need. Both guys are 33 years old or older, and if you know anything about Tyron, you know that he has a long injury history. Obviously, we hope the best for Tyron, and we hope that he plays all 17 games, but I don't think you can head into this year as the Jets and bank on both players playing a full 17 games and that they're going to play every single snap and that they don't have to worry about addressing this position. So, to me, a player that has been overthought this entire past couple months is a guy that I think could honestly benefit from sitting behind them for a year, or if in the scenario either one gets hurt, sitting behind them for a couple weeks, and that's Penn State's Olu Fashanu. Olu was a very, very good prospect entering the 2023 season, and I know there's some concerns with his run blocking, and I think there's a little bit of overreaction to the game against Ohio State in which he played Ohio State's JT's Tui Maloau. I think Olu's going to be a fine left tackle for years, and even if he sits behind Tyron Smith for half a year, I think that would do him, I think that would benefit him greatly, and I think the Jets at 10 would still strongly consider offensive tackle. The New England Patriots are on the clock. Also, yes, for anyone watching, I did throw on a hat between picks. But the Patriots are on the clock, guys, and like we said, this team is not good. They have a lot of holes on this roster, and you can pretty much justify any player here and say, yep, that guy fits, even that guy fits. Whoever you're pointing at right now, yes, they would probably improve the Patriots roster. But one guy that I think would, in particular, really help the Patriots roster is Troy Fautanu from Washington. I like Troy a lot. He has both guard and tackle versatility. He was a big winner from the combine. He had 34-inch arms, and like we said, he can play inside or outside at the NFL level, and we are improving a unit for the Patriots that desperately need it. They really couldn't do anything last year offensively, whether it was run the ball or, like we saw for most of the year, pass the football, whether it was Mack or whether it was Bailey Zappi. So we're going to do everything we can to give our quarterbacks or running backs more time to either, throw the ball or see lanes or create lanes. So I like Troy to the Patriots a lot. Now, with Denver on the clock, guys, take your choosing. J.J. McCarthy, Bo Nix, Michael Penix. I don't think Sean Payton effectively blows everything up the way that he did without a successor in mind, and I think J.J. McCarthy at this point in time would be the pick. I don't think there's much more analysis that needs to be had other than that J.J. McCarthy is the best quarterback available between the three, and I think J.J. would go to Denver there. Now, with the Raiders on the clock, guys, I gotta be honest, Gardner Minshew, to me, is a good bridge quarterback, and I like that signing a lot. He, to me, is an improvement over Aiden O'Connell, and I would have seriously questioned what Tom Telesco and Antonio Pierce's plan was heading into 2024 if Aiden O'Connell was their guy. But now that they at least have a bridge quarterback, I think you can make a case for Bo Nix to be their first round pick, but we're going to, in a fashion similar to the Patriots, though not as extreme, because I think the Raiders roster is a lot better than what New England's is, at least at the moment. We're going to do a pick that we've mocked to them before. Talisa Fuanga is just, to me, he's a Raider in every sense. He's physical as hell. He's nasty as hell. And if you're a Raiders fan and you would get to watch him against Max in training camp, that would be a treat. I'd be pretty surprised if those two would not be split up with at least one fight during camp. Both players, you see the passion on their sleeves every single play. Fuanga being a Raider, guys, it makes a lot of sense. Now, with the Saints on the clock here, I struggled with this selection, admittedly. I struggle with this selection. There's a lot of players that you can mock to them, and you think, hey, look, that makes sense. That guy also would make sense here. But one team that I think would be looking to trade up is the Cincinnati Bengals. The Bengals, we're just gonna go ahead and fast forward this. I think 18-80 would be enough for 14-1-3. The Bengals quite literally have $250 million invested in their quarterback. They need to protect him at all costs. You never know in the first round, especially teams that could trade up. So the Bengals are going to go ahead and trade a 1-3, and they're going to go ahead and trade up and get a player that has, I think J.C. Latham has a pretty solid floor. I think he has a very high ceiling. I think JC is a guy that's kind of gotten pushed down the board in a loaded class because, you guys, remember, the 2024 draft class there's talent everywhere. Like, there is still talent on the board that would have been a top 5 pick in last year's draft, at least talent-wise. And JC, to me, is a guy that has the potential to start at tackle. Of course, you also have to remember that they lost Jonah Williams in free agency. But JC has the potential to start for 6, 7, 8 years. And I think Cincinnati has to do whatever they can to go up and get their guy, whether that's J.C. Latham or another player that will be off the board shortly. Now, with Indy on the clock, I would love to mock them Cooper DeJean. I would love to mock them Quinyon Mitchell. In fact, I would be fine with either. But with Shane Steichen as the head coach, with Anthony Richardson as the quarterback, with Jonathan Taylor as the running back, and just signing Michael Pittman to an extension, and we also have Josh Downs, who had a pretty solid rookie year, all things considered, we're going to continue to improve the offense. Shout out Bernard Ryman as well. He had a pretty good year at left tackle. We're going to draft Brock Bowers. Guys, we're going to do everything we can to ensure our rookie quarterback doesn't take as many hits as Anthony Richardson last year. And if we get the ball in Brock Bowers' hands, that's one less hit than Anthony Richardson will have to take. We want Anthony Richardson to be the quarterback of this franchise for a long, long time. Not to say that we're going to take away his legs, of course, because that's one of the best parts of Richardson's game. But, guys, Brock Bowers in Indy makes a lot of sense, and that offense would not be a fun one to match up against. Now, with Seattle on the clock, guys, they didn't run the ball anywhere close to as well as they wanted to last year. I know they just signed Leonard Williams to a 3-year deal. Personally, I wasn't the biggest fan of that. I also, well, that kind of goes back to the trade. I wasn't the biggest fan of trading a second-round pick for Leonard Williams. But that's kind of another video's idea. But I wouldn't hate them taking either Johnny or Byron Murphy. But, guys, we're going to keep this simple. We're going to draft interior offensive line. We're going to go with Jackson Powers Johnson. He's an upgrade. He will help pave ways for both Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet, and he'll even keep Geno. He'll keep Geno safe and upright as well. And even if Geno gets hurt, then they have Sam Howell, who was recently acquired from the Commanders. So Jackson Powers Johnson, to me, one of the highest floors in this draft class, outside of guys like Marvin Harrison or Brock Bowers or Malik Neighbors. I like Jackson Powers Johnson a lot as a prospect, and it's kind of beneficial for Seattle too that he's from Oregon, so they've certainly been watching him play all year. Now, with the Jags on the clock, full transparency, guys, I have a video coming out Thursday that is grading free agent signings, and I discussed one thing that the Jags did that I did not like, but I could potentially like under a stipulation. And that was, I'm going to kind of give away at least some of that part of the video. I don't like the Gabe Davis signing if they do not address the receiver position in the first or second round. And with Brian Thomas Jr. staring you right in the face, guys, we're at a point in the Trevor Lawrence timeline where things are getting a little scarier than I'm sure Jags fans would like to admit. We don't know if Trevor Lawrence is going to be the long-term guy. We obviously want him to be. We obviously hope he is, but that timeline is getting a little bleak. So we're going to help him out. Of course, we already helped him out by bringing in Mitch Morse and Gabe Davis. We're going to help him out even more and have a trio of Brian Thomas Jr., Christian Kirk, and Gabe Davis. Now, with the Saints on the clock, honestly, a similar thought here. Although Derek Carr is, we already paid him big money. He has a 4-year, $150 million contract. I am not impressed at all with the Saints receiving core outside of Chris Olave. I know Rashid Shaheed is a deep ball guy. He's fun when he makes big plays, but guys, I want another weapon for Derek Carr. We invested that much money in him for a reason, and we're going to give him a very, very good receiver. Adonai Mitchell is a prospect that I love. His game to me translates seamlessly to the NFL. He has a great move on a slant route where he will kind of stab outside with his right foot, come back in, and almost every time it creates just a pocket of separation. That would be extremely beneficial for Derek Carr, just to 3-step drop back, boom, Adonai Mitchell's right there. We're going to pick up 8 yards every time we do it. Adonai Mitchell and Chris Olave would also be a very fun duo, and it's a duo that I like a lot. And I think that pick makes a lot of sense for the Saints. Now, with the Rams on the clock, they had a player retire recently by the name of Aaron Donald. You might have heard of him. 10-time Pro Bowler, 3-time Defensive Player of the Year. Pretty good player. Scared the hell out of opposing quarterbacks for a decade. But now we have to replace that guy. And I think Johnny Newton, I think he is a better prospect than Byron Murphy. And I know it's not ideal from a narrative standpoint to immediately have Donald retire and then in the first round draft what is effectively his replacement. So no pressure, Johnny Newton, and if you're not a multiple-time Defensive Player of the Year award winner, you're a bust. All jokes aside, Johnny Newton makes a lot of sense, guys. I would love the duo of Johnny and Kobe Turner on the interior, and then have Byron Young rushing from the exterior, who finished top 5 in pressures in the 2023 class in pressures last year. So Aaron Donald retires. I mean, you're never going to replace Aaron Donald. That's like saying, hey, go replace Tom Brady or go replace, whoever. You get the point. But Johnny Newton makes a lot of sense for the Rams, and that's a selection that I like to them a lot. Now, with the Steelers on the clock, Russell Wilson, Justin Fields, they have their quarterbacks, at least for 2024. They also traded Deontay Johnson. I don't think Ladd McConkey going 20 overall, Troy Franklin going 20 overall is very realistic, but a player that I think fits the Steelers' mold a lot is Quinyon Mitchell. I think Quinyon is a player that Mike Tomlin would absolutely love to get his hands on from day one, and if you can have a back end of Quinyon, Joey Porter Jr., and Minkah Fitzpatrick, in a conference where you desperately need it, simply put, you're sitting pretty. So I love Quinyon to the Steelers a lot, and to be honest, I think I'd be kind of surprised if Quinyon falls to 20 on draft night. The Miami Dolphins are up, and I think they have two routes. Two very easy routes. Offensive line or defensive line. Take your choosing. To me, Byron Murphy is a better defensive line prospect than Graham Barton is offensive line prospect. Not intended to be Graham Barton disrespect. Like him a lot, but when you need a defensive lineman, especially after Christian Wilkins just signed a $110 million contract, why not get cheaper on the defensive line? Why not get better than what you currently have? And go ahead and draft Byron Murphy. Not only that, but when Byron is, or not when Byron's healthy, but when Jalen Phillips and Bradley Chubb both come off their injury, it's going to be a pretty good trio that the Dolphins have. Now, with the Eagles on the clock, guys, there's a couple positions they need. Defensive back is, of course, one. I loved mocking them, either Christian Gonzalez or Witherspoon at pick 10 last year if they fell, and Terrion Arnold is staring them right in the face. Terrion Arnold makes a lot of sense. He's a good corner. He is an upgrade to what they have, and you also have to remember that Howie a lot of the time likes to draft ahead of replacements, and he quite literally just did that with Jalen Carter and Fletcher Cox as Fletcher retired. He also did that with Cam Jurgens with Jason Kelsey retiring. Granted, Jurgens was a couple years ago, but Terrion Arnold makes too much sense. He is a great corner prospect, and really with any of these corners here, pick your choosing. Terrion Arnold is a Philadelphia Eagle. Now, this one may come as a surprise because we talked about the Patriots earlier about how they simply need to get better. And like we said earlier, you can make a case that almost any player will upgrade what they have. So earlier at pick 11, we gave the Patriots Troy Fautanu from Washington. And I know this might seem crazy to do this, but just at least let me explain here. The Patriots have pick 34. They have pick 68. I also released a video about 3 weeks ago titled "The 2024 Receiving Class is a Once-in-a-Lifetime Class," and I truly believe that. And I think the Patriots can very easily get receiver help at pick 34, which is coming up in just 11 picks, or even pick 68 and just be fine. They just signed KJ Osborne. Their receiving core is not good. Juju Smith-Schuster, they will certainly need upgrades there. But do we want to force Ladd McConkey or Troy Franklin right now? I personally do not, and I think out of all the players available, I think we would go Amarius Mims and have 3 of the offensive linemen of the 5 being Mike and Nwenu. Love that re-signing, by the way. Troy Fautanu, and then Amarius Mims. We are going to do everything we can to ensure we are not beat down on the offensive trenches, and I know that may seem like a boring first round for the Patriots, but it's a start. And of course, David Andrews at center, and with Cole Strange at left guard, that pick is, I've been underwhelmed from that since the beginning, especially where he was projected, but hopefully he pans out, and if not, then they have Sidi Sow, a second-year player that they drafted last year. So we walk out of the first round, Troy Fautanu would kick inside, he would play on the outside, and then Amarius Mims would play on the outside, and then David Andrews, of course, at center. So New England upgrades their offensive line in a big way. And speaking of upgrading the offensive line, the Cowboys just had Tyron Smith leave in free agency to the Jets. They drafted Tyler Smith 2 years ago in the first round. Tyler has been a very good player for them. He played most of his rookie year at left tackle. He played most of his second year at left guard. And for his third year, I think we would kick him back out to tackle and have Graham Barton move in at left guard. The reason for that would be because I wouldn't want Graham Barton to go up against every edge in his rookie year and basically just be hung out to dry and basically say, hey, Graham, sink or swim, good luck, buddy. When we have a good option in Tyler Smith to play left tackle and Graham can make the transition inside, and I think that's a pick that everybody wins. Now, with Green Bay on the clock, I like what they did with Xavier McKinney and Josh Jacobs in free agency. Josh Jacobs signed a $48 million contract, but you got to remember that only 12.5 of that is guaranteed. So great deal for Green Bay in case Jacobs flames out early in that contract. And Xavier McKinney is a very underrated player. And to have a secondary with Xavier McKinney, Jair Alexander, and Cooper DeJean is in a lot of ways a no-fly zone. That's not going to be one teams are going to be looking forward to play. And I mean, Cooper DeJean makes a lot of sense, guys. Cooper DeJean, Jair Alexander corner duo. I have a lot of concerns with Eric Stokes. Hopefully, in the best case scenario, Stokes would play the best football of his career with his job effectively on the line. But regardless, we have Cooper DeJean and Jair Alexander moving forward. Now, with the Bucks on the clock, Joe Tryon-Shoyinka has not been what they hoped for as a first-round pick. They also released Shaq Barrett. Shaq also signed with the Dolphins. And this is pretty simple here, guys. Laiatu Latu is a tremendous football player. And if you can get him at pick 26, I think that is borderline draft steal territory. And I wouldn't dislike anything about that. That would be a pick. Latu goes to a good situation. The Bucks draft a good football player. Everybody wins. Cardinals on the clock. I know the easy selection would be to say Nate Wiggins is there. He's the 14th player on the big board. He's a good prospect. Draft him, move on. However, I think Nate Wiggins only weighing 170, that concerns me. I'd be lying if I wasn't a little weary of that. And I don't know if there's a 20-spot difference between Nate Wiggins and Kool-Aid McKinstry, but I think Kool-Aid would fit better in Arizona. And to be completely honest, guys, when you look at the NFC West, Nate Wiggins, I mean, yeah, there's matchups that favor him, but guys, can you imagine Nate Wiggins going up against Debo or going up against DK? I mean, that would be an insane mismatch, and it would be very reminiscent of Emmanuel Forbes going up against A.J. Brown in the NFC East in 2023. And if you were wondering, that didn't work out well for Emmanuel at all. So, moving on here, the Buffalo Bills are on the clock. Very simple, guys. They need receiver help. They just lost Gabe Davis. I know they just signed, I got to look this up, guys. You got to give me a sec here. They just signed, hold on. The guy from the Commanders. I know this is bad. I'm sorry. I know you guys are screaming who it is. It's Curtis Samuel. I'm 99% sure. We're just confirming. And the Bills did, in fact, just sign Curtis Samuel. Apologies for that. So what we need to do, build the receiver room. Curtis Samuel, Stephon Diggs. We're going to get a tall receiver. We're going to go Troy Franklin. And I'm leaving that in, by the way. We're all human beings. It happens. I'm leaving that part in. Next up, Detroit Lions. Guys, they just lost Jonah Jackson to the Rams, a guard. Frank Ragnow is also, I want to say, going on year 8 or 9. He's not going to be there forever. There's a prospect by the name of Zach Frazier coming out of West Virginia that, like Jackson Powers Johnson, very high floor. Frazier has been a long-time starter for the Mountaineers. He was I want to say, a 4-year starter for them, and you can play him at guard year 1. Whether Ragnow, I'm not saying Ragnow's going to retire next year, but maybe in year 4 of Frazier's career, maybe Ragnow hangs up the cleats, then you have Frazier there. But guys, I don't see any way that Frazier doesn't upgrade their offensive line immediately. I liked what the Lions did in free agency by bringing in DJ Reader. They traded for Carlton Davis. I don't think edge necessarily would fit right now. You know, Braswell or Chop Robinson or Darius Robinson for that matter, when they just signed Marcus Davenport. I'm not the biggest Marcus Davenport fan, but when Zach Frazier is staring you right in the face, and some of these guys to me are a little risky, just take the high floor player. And not only is Zach Frazier a high floor player, but he's a guy that definitely fits the Motor City Dan Campbell mentality and mold. All right, with the Ravens on the clock, guys, this pick right here would remind me a lot of Kyle Hamilton falling to them at pick 14 or Tyler Linderbaum falling to them later in the first round back in 2022. Nate Wiggins is a good corner prospect. Yes, there is some weight concerns, but guys, corner is an underrated need for the Ravens, and Marlon Humphrey has played around 100 career NFL games, and you can never have enough corner help. Corner is also a position where it's not like a fall off like this. It's usually like, and the reason for that is because if guys don't have lateral quickness when they're 21 or when they're 27 rather, like they did at 21, it is noticeable as hell on tape, and that's what offensive minds are looking for every single week. So if there's any sort of drop off at all, that's why corners fall off so quickly. So I do think a Marlon Humphrey fall off is coming, whether that's in 2024 or 2025. Hopefully I'm wrong in that part because I like Marlon a lot. Wish him the best, but I do think that fall off is eventually coming. And Eric DeCosta, like Howie Roseman of the Eagles, they draft ahead. They did that last year with Trenton Simpson at linebacker in the 3rd round, knowing Patrick Queen was going to leave in free agency the following year because they didn't want to pay Roquan and Patrick both. Now, with the 49ers up, guys, this is simple. They need offensive line help. Tyler Guyton, big athletic tackle, 6'7", 330. He would upgrade the right tackle position. They've been looking to fill this hole since Mike McGlinchey left in free agency to Denver, which was just last offseason. But the point stands, bring in Tyler Guyton, you upgrade the right tackle position, you get cheaper at the position, and he will hopefully pave ways for CMC or Debo in 2024. Now, with the Chiefs on the clock, this is an interesting pick because they can go a lot of places. They can go Ladd McConkey. They can go with the pending L'Jarius Sneed trade that some people think is going to happen. They can go TJ Tampa. They can go Mike Sandra still. But a player that I think the Chiefs will strongly consider is a guy that has not had a great pre-draft process and a guy that I think will translate seamlessly, well, not seamlessly, but I think he'll translate pretty well to the NFL. And I think his 40 time was a lot slower than what his game speed is. And I think that player is Keon Coleman. Now, Keon, to me, guys, is a player that will be good at the NFL level. He will translate to the NFL level, and he would have a pretty good quarterback throwing him the football in Kansas City. So Keon Coleman he'd be a great pick in Kansas City. They would have him, they would have Rashee Rice, they would have Marquise Brown, and of course Travis Kelce. And from having essentially nobody in a year where they still won the Super Bowl, they upgraded a lot this offseason. So that is today's mock. I hope you guys enjoyed. And if you did, please like and subscribe. Please comment your favorite pick, your least favorite pick. And like I said, please subscribe. Helps the channel tremendously. And until next time, please be safe and have a great day. Love you guys.